We are going live. See, I guess I don't need these headphones. It is time to go live. Happy October, everybody. This is Jesse from the Breathwork channel. You may have noticed we've renamed the channel. This is all a part of a slow but very intentional reboot of this channel. So expect some really cool things. If you are tuning in today, today is all about answering questions from the Breath Club. So this is the Breath Club on Patreon. This is a Patreon club that started back in 2020 when I would say as a budding breath worker, really taking the business side of breathwork serious, really trying to get out there and do workshops, do public events and things like that. That was the day. Those were the days when I had the whole year 2020. It was all scheduled out. That was actually whenever I was working on my first book. Let's see, this one right here, A Practical Guide to Breathwork. We had to close everything down. And so the Breath Tribe began. So this is the Breath Club. I'm going to be answering. Actually, we had one specific question this month. So in the Breath Club, there are certain tiers that get to ask questions. We only had one question this month. Normally we have like maybe 5 or 6 questions. This month it was a little quiet. So I'll be happy to take your questions today if you have them as well. And also there was a question that was posed not long ago. Actually, I'm just going to be pulling that up. And I'll be answering that question as well today. So today's going to be a lot of fun. Stick around and hang out. Let me know where you're coming from. If you're here, just say hey, say hello. Happy to have you today. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about I guess there are some issues in the state of breathwork right now. I get a lot of different kinds of questions about this, but one is that we've got this week from Luke, and I appreciate the question. This is ultimately, do numbers matter? Okay. So Luke is coming from a position where he started and he was doing a lot of Buteyko, a lot of oxygen advantage. And first of all, we'll talk a little bit about the Bolt score and why I don't use the Bolt score anymore. But not saying that it's useless, but just saying that I'll tell you why I don't use the Bolt score anymore with my programs. But basically, when it comes down to it, he was saying, hey, listen, are these numbers, we really focus a lot on these numbers. Can you help me when it comes to how fast should I progress? And when do I know, when it comes to these numbers, when do I know that I've gotten to a place where I'm healthy, right? So what is that healthy place? Because this particular question was coming from a person who had already crossed the threshold that we generally look for. So we're going to get into this. We're going to talk a little bit more about it. If you are interested in joining the Breath Club, you can do that. That is, you can take a look at the link below, or you can just go to Patreon and look for the Breath Club. That's us on Patreon. After this session for Q&A at the next hour, we're going to get into a breathwork session. It's a group breathwork session. This month in the Breath Club is extra special. If you're part of the Breath Club, you know that normally I do 2 breath sessions for everyone. So every month you get 2 new breath sessions. They're mixed methods, techniques, different lengths, different focuses. The goal here is not to just do the same thing over and over again. You see a lot of that on TV or not TV. I guess, I don't know. Have you ever seen TV anymore? But you see a lot of the same things over and over again online. Do this to get high, DMT. And hey, there's a conversation we can have. Are we really producing DMT when we do breath work? Hey, I haven't had that question in a little while, so maybe we'll talk about it soon. But I see a lot of these taglines over and over again. And in the Breath Club, that's all well and good. And we definitely do feel blissful. We can do altered state breath work. We have a lot of things we can do with breath. But the real breath work, the things that really makes the biggest difference, is those things that help you to get through the day, to make better choices, better decisions, show up better for your loved ones. And it's not always something that is going to, be an altered state experience, which of course we have a lot of those. You can find a lot of those. If you just want to dip into it, it's only $5 and you get access to the full catalog. So let's say, hey, James, nice to have you here, James. Still waiting on a new guided cold shower. Oh, James. Oh, Okay. You know what, James? You got me. You got me. All right. You know what? Here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do for James. I am writing this down. You just happened to catch me at a time. I'm going to write this down. Guided cold showers. And guess what? All right. That is coming on the the Breathwork channel. Then it may be one of the first. Well, that will be. I don't think it'll be a facing video. So what we've been doing is I want to give you, and so I'm actually going to be bringing in another person to the Breathwork channel. It used to just be Jesse. It's going to be mostly me, but also I'm going to be bringing in some other people that I think you're really going to like into the studio, into our videos, and so I really think you're going to enjoy a lot of their perspectives as well. But yeah, what we've done is we decided a lot of these should be things that you can use just every single day. Right. So if you've taken a look at a lot of the recent drops, they are guided sessions using animations. My son actually he uses the ones with animations. He finds that to be easier than some of the ones where you got your eyes closed. So there is a place for visualization. So and I guess visualization in many different ways. There is a place for all those places. But in this case, we've got some of those. So this will be a guided shower. I tell you what, James, if you're here, I'll tell you what. How long? How long of a shower do you want? How long should you tell me? Right, we're serving it up. I've got one question from the Breath Tribe this month. So some months I get like a whole bunch of questions. What normally happens is I'll get between 5 and 10 questions, and most of them are about the same thing. I don't know what it is, the synchronicities or whatever it is, but most of the time people are asking about the same things. Maybe it's that the people are talking about on podcasts or things like that. But it's like generally I get about a handful, maybe 10 questions, and that's about it. This month it's crickets. So we have a lot of time to have fun here. So James, the 6-minute one is the one you use daily. Awesome. So let's see here. Do you want to go for a 10-minute one? Should we do 10 minutes? Or should we just mix up and make it a cooler 6 minutes? Well, you tell me, you order it up. I'm taking orders right now. I got my marker right here. And that goes for everybody else listening too. We want to make sure that you love this channel and that it's a channel that's serving you. So you just let me know. You said still waiting for the cold shower. Nasal breathing is the way, but I can't go as deep as I do with mouth breathing. So here's let's see. Oh, Eric, thanks for being here, buddy. Good to have you here. Yeah, better late than never. We're just kind of, we haven't even gotten started this month. And I tell you what, Eric, I believe you are in the tier now where you can ask any question you like. So, hey, ask away. I only got one question this month from the group. I was just saying that normally I get between 5 and 10. A lot of times those 5 and 10 are normally asking similar questions. So I can sort of batch this and say, okay, these 3 or 4 people were asking about this. Let's talk about it in depth. So if you have a question, let me know. This month we're talking about do numbers matter? We're going to be talking about that. And it's interesting because this month we are going to be, in the Breath Club. You might have noticed there's a lot of things that drop today. So normally I produce 2 guided breathwork sessions and that's it. This month we were focusing on breath mechanics. And so what I decided to do, we have one session. If you've read, this book, or even if you haven't and you just want to experience it, it's called Warrior Breath 1 and Warrior Breath 2. I think I have a copy of Warrior Breath 1 on the Breathwork channel, on this channel here for free. If you don't mind the ads, if you buy the book, there's a code in the back where you can download it for free. And then, of course, in the Breath Club, you can get Warrior 1, Warrior 2. But today we dropped Gently Strong, which is a way to improve our overall breath mechanics, our breath muscles. And it's got multiple techniques in it that are combined. And so what I said, you know what? I know for a fact that a lot of these techniques, either a person may not know, especially if you're new to the Breath Club. So you know what we're going to do? Instead of 2 sessions, we're going to have 5 sessions. Okay. So 1, or maybe it's 4 sessions. I forget. I think it might be 4 sessions. 3 of the sessions are the techniques and then just that guided technique. And I'm here in the studio just doing it myself, guiding you through the technique. And then we put them all together in one complete session for building the strength. So I'm glad you like that. I'm glad you like that, Eric. Yeah, so we had a really comprehensive drop today. And then later on today, we have the monthly breath tip. Did you know that you're probably doing box breathing wrong? And as a result, you're not getting the actual effect, right? So this is something I practiced box breathing. And I shouldn't necessarily say wrong. And I explained this in the video for the monthly breath tip and the breath club. But a lot of people are practicing it in a way that causes more activation than you should and than was originally intended. So we cover that as well. So all kinds of cool things going on in the breath club. Make sure to join. At the next hour, we're going to do it's probably around, I plan for 15 minutes and usually it lasts a half hour for some of these sessions. So we're going to get a nice breath session in. It'll be nice and blissful and fun. And that's at the next hour. If you're in the breath tribe, you get a link. We all meet on Zoom. It's a lot of fun. So anyway, let's get to it. Today, I did have a question about the numbers. When it comes to optimal health, what is the optimal number, especially with regards to CO2? Now, I see this question in a lot of different forms. I see a lot of people different. Hey, it's Mike Mayer. Take a deep breath. Good to see you, buddy. Good to see you. So anyway, getting back to the question. So Mike, I'm talking about some questions here. I got a question about CO2, right? So this is an interesting thing, right? So what is the best number? What number are we looking for? What is the number that says, okay, I know that I'm healthy now because of this number? And we get this in a lot of different forms. I know a lot of my clients, they'll look at their HRV. A lot of my clients are looking at their VO2 max. A lot of my clients, you might do even simpler forms of looking at your, you got to shout, you got to shout out, Mike. So we got to have shout outs, right? All the way from across the ocean. When we were kids, this was science fiction, right? So it's like, hey, anyway, getting back to it. We do chase a lot of these numbers, and I will say that some of you guys know I went through a major health ordeal recently, and one of the ways that I could objectively say, yes, it's not, yes, I feel terrible and all these things, but some of the things I could take to the doctor was, hey, look, my heart rate is normally here. I observe my heart rate normally, and it's normally here, but later, I'm up here, right? So I know for a fact there's an objective number change. So here's the thing. A lot of my clients are doing this, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I will say that it will vary from person to person. And let me just give you an example. Okay. Let me give you just a prime example of what I mean. So many of you know that I take a lot of clients. I don't advertise for this, but I do have a very robust one-on-one program that I multiple 3 programs generally that I offer. And they're customized. And if you want to work with me, reach out. But that is not the point of the story. The point of this story is to tell you about a client that I had. And this particular client came to me, and we always do a CO2 exhale test. So I don't do the Bolt score. I think the Bolt score is a little difficult to it's easy to mess up the Bolt score. The Bolt score a lot of times is sort of the thing that a lot of people point to it comes from Buteyko, the controlled pause. And then we have, Patrick McEwen, who, hey, you know what? I mean, this book right here and this book right here are Patrick McEwen's. So I love looking at his bibliographies as a person myself who does research. I think he does pretty good research. And so I like kind of peeking over his shoulder. But I don't really like using the Bolt score because I think it's so subjective. And especially when it says, okay, so you're supposed to breathe this way, and then you're going to take a little bit bigger of a breath. Then you're going to pause. You're going to hold and wait till you feel the first urge to breathe. And it's like, if I could jump into my client and say, oh, that's that urge that I was talking about, it might be different, but I can't do that. So something I find to be a far more effective way of checking a person's CO2 tolerance plus other aspects such as stress tolerance and resilience is the CO2 exhale test, which I talk about in both my books. So this one here, A Practical Guide to Breathwork. I didn't mean to actually, just the fact that this is perfect placement. Like whoever built this house, thank you so much for putting putting these things in the right place. So right here, this is language of breath. So when you certify with me, I teach you how to use the CO2 tolerance exhale. That's as your primary operating focus. So, okay. So this particular client scored below a 20, well below a 20, and below a 20 is generally sort of like the red zone. Okay. Whenever it comes to this, this is an area where we are saying, okay, so we know that in this case, it's likely that either maybe you've got some kind of illness, it's likely that maybe you're not as stress resilient as we could be. It's possible that you're currently undergoing a lot of stress. It's possible, there's a lot of things that it's possible that is causing this, but none of them are good. Let's just put it that way. And so this particular client scored well below 20, and I worked with this client for 6 weeks. And this was, I offer longer programs, but this client, it just 6 weeks worked better for her budget. And it just so happened that, that it just happened. Okay, this is fine. This works. And we worked and worked and worked. And it's not like we hyper focused on this, because I don't believe in I don't think that's what gets the best results, to be honest. I like to work indirectly in as many ways as I can. But this particular client, over those 6 weeks, started to enjoy her life more, uh, reclaimed a very important relationship that she had come to me very distraught about. Um, Started to exercise, started to eat better, all of these things that were goals that she could never seem to be able to do. All these things in her life were starting to bloom. Okay. But the most important one I want to stress is that her quality of life, she's just enjoying life more. She's talking about how her friends were saying, wow, what has changed? What's different? What have you been doing? She was like, going through all, what we've been doing together. Because I don't just do breathing techniques. Most of what I use breath as my main tool, but most of what I do is, you might call it mindset coaching. You might, however you want, I just call it coaching in most cases. But the point is, at the end of 6 weeks, okay, at the end of 6 weeks, we tested again, and she had made it right at 20. Okay. Yes, we had seen a move, but it wasn't like she was actually where I normally like to get my clients, which is above 40. Or, I like to get you as close to 60 as I can, okay, for that objective number. So she barely made it to 20. So it's right at 20 on the dot. Was that a failure? Is her progress less progress because it didn't go to 40? No. She was enjoying her life. She was happier. Everything was better, right? Things were starting to bloom that had once felt dead. I'm getting all poetic about it, but it's inspiring, right? And so I'm like, okay, that's a success. And so when we look at these numbers, I completely understand. I want my HRV to be as high as Snoop Dogg, right? I I want my VO2 max up there too. I want my numbers to be right. I want my resting heart rate to be low, all those things. But why are you doing this? It always comes down to, why are you doing this? And if you can't enjoy the present, if you're doing all of these things simply for the number, and you're ignoring your lived experience, I call that the loss. And so when I work with clients, and when I teach my students to work with clients, we do focus on ways to move these numbers and how to make these numbers improve. But the primary focus is your quality of life. And that is a subjective thing, right? And it does change. It changes depending on your mood, or are you hungry or whatever. But guess what? So do those numbers. Those numbers generally change because of those things as well. HRV is going to change, depending on, are you under a lot of stress? Are you fighting with your spouse? Are you, all these things. So I really always like to emphasize, and Luke, I appreciate this question, because this is so important for us to understand, and especially in the health and wellness space. So earlier today, I was at a Language of Breath meeting. So every week we get together in the Language of Breath Collective and we talk about things. One of the things we were talking about was specifically that is, in the health and wellness world, there is so much pressure that we put on ourselves. And don't get me wrong, I firmly do believe that your decisions will lead to your results in most cases. There's some things you just can't control, right? You can't control, someone runs out in traffic and they hit you, or you have some kind of a genetic issue that you just had no control over, right? And even in those cases, we can maybe do a little something, but let's just say, hey, the asteroid might follow the sky. Okay, you can't control the weather. There are things you cannot control, but the vast majority of your life is the product of your decisions. And as a result of that, okay, yeah, you should think about, okay, my daily actions. And there's this focus on discipline, which is, there's nothing wrong with that inherently, but it's always it does come back down to the why. Are you doing it because someone told you should do it on the Huberman podcast? Or are you doing it because this is what I do? This is in alignment with my values. This is in alignment with what I want, right? So if you're eating broccoli every day and you hate broccoli and you're just like, well, Dr. So-and-so told me, that if I eat broccoli, right? But man, you're miserable. Well, there's a few different ways to get some vitamins and minerals and some antioxidants and things like that. Maybe think about some other things. And then not to mention, what's the point if you're miserable, right? So, a lot of people come to me looking for advice on cold training. This is something I've written about too. I love these things. I'm super curious about them. I've been doing these sort of things for a while. But it shouldn't be a thing that you do because you feel compelled to do it. Like, oh, if I don't do it, I'm somehow like I'm being judged by some kind of arbitrary thing. I think it's a matter of it's really a matter of your quality of life. If this is something that's helping you to live a better life, and it's something in alignment with your values, then it isn't as hard to do it, and you don't need as much willpower to do it. Oftentimes it just takes figuring that out. And to figure it out is more than just an intellectual conversation with yourself. A lot of times figuring it out is actually practicing the thing and deciding, is this in alignment with my values and my goals? And many times you're going to find, it's not. And that's whenever it takes a real, I think a really honest person to say, okay, maybe all these other people that I've been doing this with, maybe it's great for them, but it's just not my thing. I tried CrossFit. I love fitness, right? If I could go, my friends, if I could go to the gym and just spend a good 3 hours a day lifting weights, maybe go do some cardio, hit the sauna, like I would do that. Like if I had no other obligations in life, and actually I did that for a while before I had kids. Me and my wife had our son, I would go, and on my day off, maybe like all day long, it was just, okay, work out, then do the sauna, then maybe go to jujitsu, and then maybe go back to the sauna, do a cold plunge, if that's what it was, right? And that was fantastic. It was great. But there comes a point whenever you're saying, okay, I can do anything I want to do, but I just can't do everything I want to do. So what's in alignment with my values? Where am I going? What am I doing? Right. So when it comes to these numbers, I want to read this comment here. Eric says, he says, I've given up on, I've been giving up on most numbers, HRV, etc. My numbers would mostly disappoint me, and I feel badly about it. Oh my God, that's thank you for that comment. So actually, in this last language of breath class, so we had in this last cohort, when we do dig pretty deep into HRV, and it's something that you can train pretty effectively using your breathing. And of course there's lifestyle things that are involved. And we had a client who, shared that this is something that kind of, for this particular student, it was a trigger. It's like, dude, I've been trying to max my HRV, and the more I watch it, the worse it gets. And I get upset. I see all these other people. I hear about it on all these podcasts. And just like what you're saying, Eric, it's exactly right. It's just so upsetting. And it's adding to stress. It's adding to negative feelings about myself, judgments about myself, what's wrong with me, feelings of inadequacy. So, okay, so why would you do that? Right? Now, that's not to say that a person can't do their best to improve HRV. You know how often I check HRV? None. Like I have the device. I have multiple devices to check my resting HRV. I don't check it anymore because I'm doing everything that I can do to improve it. So if I'm doing everything that I know I can do, and there's sometimes whenever I do things I know it's not going to get me a better HRV. That beer I have, or a couple beers I have on Saturday or whatever, is not helping me improve that number. But guess what? Sharing that moment with my family or my friends or other loved ones, or just going out and being in public. There's a brewery near where I live, and I've never lived in a place where I can just walk down to a brewery in my life. I've always lived in a rural area. I mean, and so I just walk down there, I'll have a beer, and I'll just kind of hang out. There's ambiance, talk to some strangers, you know, and I'm sure it's not helping my HRV. I mean, it could in some ways because of the social aspect, but that's not. But if I'm going down there and I'm being social just because it might stimulate my vagus nerve, right? Well, I mean, what kind of life are you living, right? So I'm going down there because I want to be around other people, right? I'm gonna go around there. I want to taste the whatever the newest IPA is and be around other people. That's why I do it. And you might say, "Oh, wait a minute, you're a breath worker. You're in health and wellness. You should only be drinking filtered water and I guess meditating off in a field somewhere." Well, no, that's not really what I want to do. Right? That's not in alignment with my values. I want to be here. I want to be social. I'm not talking about get rip roaring drunk every day. I'm not talking about things like that. But I am talking about being social, and that does mean sometimes I'm doing something that may not be quote unquote healthy, right? But on 99% of the day, I'm doing things that I'm maxing my HRV as far as my practices. I do my coherence breathing twice daily for 10 minutes. By the way, we dropped a 5-5 coherence breathing guided animated track on the Breathwork channel. So do it twice a day, right? Tune in twice a daily. That's great. I try to eat right. I exercise regularly. I get as much quality sleep as I can. You can only do so much. And another thing about HRV is that it will depend on the person. It's not like, and sadly enough, life isn't fair, right? So here's the thing. And what's interesting as we continue to learn more about HRV is that one person might have a really high number compared to another person, but may or may not actually be healthier. So we want to have our HRV as high as we can for our individual, I guess, our own limitations, because we're all gonna reach our limit, but that's about where it ends. Now, having said that, why would I watch it? Why would I really, focus on it if I'm already doing everything I can within my values system, to keep it where it should be, right? So I'm doing my best, right? Yeah, I weigh myself, and I'm glad I do weigh myself now and then, because with this illness I had not too long ago, I lost 25 pounds in a matter of 3 weeks, right? I mean, this was a crazy illness. And there was an instance where I didn't do anything to deserve this, right? It wasn't, I had this case of thyroiditis. It was non-Hashimoto's, non-Graves' disease thyroiditis. And quite literally, in life, stuff happens. And one of the beauties was that I had taken care of myself pretty well, so that by the time something actually hit me, because my friends, if you think you're going to get through life without something hitting you now and then or ever, sorry, but I was at least healthy enough so that I was able to withstand it. I still felt like pure crap, but I was able to move through it, and I'm getting better, and I feel really good today. So yeah, there's no use in looking at something that's going to make you feel bad, especially if you're doing your best already. So, James, my breathing techniques are to keep me grounded. Yeah. Be present as often as I can be. The numbers don't matter to me. Yeah. And I don't want to make it sound like it, you should never, if anybody's watching or listening and it's like, hey, I watch my numbers every day. And I'm not saying it's necessarily, poo-poo on you, right? But what I am saying is that the reason why those numbers even matter should be for something that is in alignment with your goals in your life, right? So the reason why HRV is even something that I would ever even think about is because, okay, I want my nervous system to be flexible so that I make better decisions under stress, because I want to make good decisions for myself and my family and my friends in the world and things like that. Because those are the things that matter, right? It's not the number. The number itself is just a measurement of vagal tone and, flexibility in my nervous system, which might mean that I make better decisions. But I will tell you this, I'm sure there's plenty of people out there with very high HRV that make terrible decisions on a regular basis. So, we're doing the best we can. And so it's something that yeah, I'm so glad. Luke, we had one question, but it's really led to a great discussion. Eric, if I had more direct instruction and hand holding, I could be better. Maybe, maybe not. Well, that's true. So this is where coaching does come into play. And here's the thing: I will admit something, my friends. I am not the kind of person who naturally is inclined to seek out coaching. But so what I am, okay, so actually I have these down here. So in my last brush with death, so I thought I was going to die, and I was like, why didn't I? What's so funny is when you can't do anything, that's whenever you realize the things that you wish you would have started and wish you would have kept doing. So during my sickness, I started playing guitar a lot, and I bought these books. I don't know if anybody recognized these books. They're chord progressions and different variations on how you can do these different things. I am the type of person who I do a lot of research, and that's generally what I feel most comfortable with. I'm like, well, if it's information that I need, well, then I can find the information. I can digest that information. I can do it. Well, you know what? Guess how much of these guess how much of this I've read. Now you'll notice they're in very good condition. And they're all together. And I haven't read any of it. I haven't read a single one of them. I think I looked over one page and strummed a few of the chords, and then that was it. It took me, actually, my wife made me do it. Okay. So sometimes you need a good influence in your life, but she's like, you're going to go get a guitar teacher. And having someone who's going to hold you accountable, having someone who is like, yes, when it comes to guitar theory and how the guitar works and all those things like that, I can do the research. The information's out there. What a lot of times it takes is a person seeing you struggle and understanding when to raise the bar and when to lower the bar as you continue your journey. That's what a good coach and guide does. So absolutely, I always think it's always helpful to get guidance. Now, having said that, the beauty of practice makes better. I like the way that sounds. Sometimes people say practice makes permanent too. I learned that from one of my mentors, Dave Whitley. The Iron Tamer, Dave Whitley, who I met early on in my career. He's still an amazing guy. He does feats of strength and skill. And Dave, if you're watching, it almost sounded like I was going to say, rest in peace, Dave. but he's still very much with us. Dave, he told me, David Whitley, he said, practice makes permanent. And it's what he was talking about is the fact that how we do something, we're practicing the way we do something, right? And so you can make it better or worse through practicing. Because, for instance, I'm trying to teach my son about things, right? And so recently we've been talking about ethics and philosophy, and of course he's 10 years old, so he loves that about as much as we all like drinking vinegar. He's like, ugh. But when it comes down to it, it's like, okay, so if you practicing the right things. And here's the thing about HRV. The thing about HRV is that it's not so much of a complexity issue for most of us. It's a consistency issue. So if you just take this advice, and you can just go on the Breathwork channel, and Eric, you're part of the premium group in the Breath Club, so you get access to the one without any commercials or anything. And all you have to do is just follow along with that twice daily, and try your best to just be relaxed and smooth and smooth out the breathing, and not try to over muscle it. You'd be surprised. you know? Um, just the nice thing about heart resonance frequency breathing, which sometimes we call coherence breathing, is that it is something that is more dependent on the rate of breath than anything else. Yes, other factors come into play, and there is some fine tuning that you can do to really maximize the practice. But I would say 80% of it is just simply sitting there with some reasonable posture and breathing in and breathing out to that tone, right? So breathing in for 5, out for 5 for most people. Some people it's 4-6, other people it would be 6-6. There's variations within that as well. But again, don't worry. So I think the big thing is the fine tuning only really matters after the consistency is in place. So yeah, stick with it, brother. You're going to do great. And this is something that this is why community matters, and this is why the breath club that we're in matters. I also said the breath source. That's another group that I'm in, but the breath club, this Patreon club, is why it's so helpful. I think you actually have a community of people around the world who are interested in this sort of thing, and we're interested in it more than just let's huff and puff and believe that it's going to make all of our problems go away. No, we're interested in a very realistic, rational way where we're going to apply these things, knowing full well that life is going to happen, and as it happens, we're simply equipping ourselves and making ourselves more resilient along the way. So, Chris Roth in the house. Thank you for this. I really appreciate how practical and grounded to daily life your teaching is. Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate you, and thanks for all your comments. It really helps as a person who's making this content and who's putting it out there. It's always nice to get your feedback, Chris. So I really appreciate that. And that goes for everybody else here. So I really do appreciate your feedback on these things. When it comes to whether I'm working with a client individually or in the breath club or on the Breathwork channel, which we now have changed the name of the channel to the Breathwork channel, whatever it is, the goal here is to make it something that is applicable to life, right? So often I will see, and sadly enough, these people get really popular really fast, but so often I will see, I'll see this, belief that if you practice this technique or if you do this, whatever methodology, you've somehow made some kind of a shortcut in life, and you've ameliorated all the problems, and or you're going to have some kind of secret wisdom, or there's all these things. And hey, listen, I learned from all these people. I would follow them around. I sort of joined their cults occasionally, but what I really want to do is bring this to the whole world, right? A world that needs to calm down, right? We need to calm down. We need to see the humanity in ourselves and in each other. And so I appreciate your comment there, Chris, and thank you so much for being a part of the Breath Tribe. James, I started breathing techniques in 2021. That's that I think you're not alone there, James. I think that 2021 was a real turning point. He says, I ended up with bowel cancer in 2024. The docs tell me the breath work and the cold showers helped me prior to my diagnosis with my recovery. Well, hey, here's to your recovery, James. We're all cheering for you, and you keep up the good work, because that's a tough one. That's a tough one. So you keep up the good work, and I'm so glad you're still here and still breathing. Right, stay with us, and keep up your cold exposure as well. That's such a powerful thing. So thank you so much. Yeah, and this is one of those things where what James says is kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier. We don't, in the health and wellness world, there's such a push for perfection, and there's sort of a denial of the fact that we do get sick, right? If you are a human, right, and this is where oftentimes the message is almost like become superhuman with this technique or this methodology or whatever. But if you're a human, you will have something that's gonna, you don't know when it's gonna hit you, but something is there's something out there that it's got your name on it, right? And how we prepare both physically and mentally is going to determine how we make it through, right? And I guarantee you, James, when you were getting into breath work and cold exposure, You were preparing for this unknown thing that, you didn't know this was going to hit you, but you're preparing yourself and making yourself more resilient emotionally. You're becoming more in touch with yourself, both psychologically and physiologically. And this is, I would say, it's not the sexiest selling point for what we're doing, for especially for breath work and cold exposure, or just health and wellness. It's not the sexiest thing to say, hey, get ready for the time when you're going to get sick, because, so now's the time. But it really is, right? You have now. It's kind of like whenever I'm helping my son study for a test. Test is tomorrow. You can study all night. You have up until tomorrow. Like, it will come, right? Right now is the only time you have to prepare for it. Once it happens, you cannot prepare for it anymore, right? What are you going to do with this time? And I know it's not the sexiest thing. It's much sexier to say, well, this time will never come if you just do all the right things. But you're setting yourself up for a disaster if you think that. It's just the way that the human condition is. Something will take you out, and that is not admitting defeat. That is not a fatalist attitude. I would say, it's something we have to just admit as human beings. You might say it's a stoic attitude, saying, hey, I know this thing will happen. I know that there's the old saying, and we often will say it in Latin, but it in English, it's remember that you will die, right? So there are things that are going to hit us, and it's not always necessarily a health concern for us. Maybe it's a loved one going through something and you have to be a caregiver. That's not easy. Maybe it's, you fill in the blank, right? Maybe there's your house burns down. Maybe there's a person in your life who dies suddenly. There's all kinds of things that we don't have control over. So as we go through our life, are you going to make yourself more or less prepared for something, right? Are you going to make it so that you're strong and resilient when those things happen? Or are you going to just hope for the best, and then when those things happen, you haven't built any of those skills or any of those sort of psychological or physiological tools or methodologies up. So let's see. This is a bit of a turn from the conversation. Hey, it's all good, brother. But I would be curious to know how your thinking has progressed regarding altered states of breathing techniques since you wrote a practical guide. Oh, that's a great question. So I used to look at altered state breath work as sort of like the best breath work. You got box breathing, you got beginner stuff, you got heart resonance frequency breathing. That's for beginners. Okay. But where the real juice is, where the real good stuff is going to come from, is the altered state breath work. And so I would do it every day, or I would do something like it every day, right? I did a lot of superventilation. It was, I think, because I started learning from Wim Hof. So that was back before he was on any of the shows or anything like that. He was just this random weirdo that I found in my studies. So I started with that kind of an attitude. Let's do it every morning, first thing when you wake up, and maybe even later on in the day. And, it's all about, chasing that feeling, right? And what I found was that it was a lot like a previous thing that I had in my life, which was I used to have an opioid addiction, and a lot of it was in that world, you call it chasing the dragon. And so what happened was that the profundity and a lot of the things that I thought I was doing, I thought I was doing something that I wasn't. And I was looking at this 15-minute to 1 hour practice to sort of be the thing that somehow does all these things for me in the rest of my life. Now, having said that, I still love altered state breath work. So I'm not saying that I've fallen out of love with it. I am saying that I've decided that it's not something for me to do every day. It's something for me to hold for when it's appropriate. right? So, for instance, when I do retreats or whenever I have a decision I need to make, or maybe maybe there's some kind of a block that I need to overcome. Maybe I'll do some altered state breath work. But what I have found, and what I firmly believe, and this has a lot to do with how we work with traumas, both big T and little t, and all the things that we've had in our lives that affect us. What a lot of this is, I have found, at least in my belief, is that much of breath work is about learning how to become more present and more have a better relationship with yourself. So you're making better decisions in everyday life, which lead to better outcomes. And that means being more resilient to stress, which takes training that's different than altered state breath work. And I know that altered state breath work, I used to believe that made me more resilient to stress, but I really don't believe that anymore. I don't believe that it makes. I honestly believe if you do altered state breath work regularly, if that's the only thing that you do, especially, you're making yourself less resilient to stress. And I know some people will disagree with me, and that's fine. Um, I'm not asking permission, right? to think what I think and to believe what I believe. Um, so the reason, so when I do breath work, it's more about um, it's more about every breath that matters and ultimately learning how to listen. The beauty of altered state breath work is that right now, all of us are having a lot of emotions that we're probably not aware of, right? And so one of the beauties behind altered state breath work is that it sort of peels back that layer of resistance to observing those emotions, and it helps us to become more aware of those things. Now, if if you are doing this for the right purpose, and if you're doing for the purpose of becoming more aware of your emotions, working with your emotions, I think it can be transformational. And I don't use that word lightly, but I do believe it can be transformational when you do altered state breath work. It can be something that begins this cycle, that or begins an action that later on requires conscious decision making, rational thought, making that's every single day. I think is a great catalyst. It's not something. It's like, for instance, when I was younger, I would do a lot of like mushrooms and acid and things like that. And I was doing it as part of the party scene, right? I could call that plant medicine, but it wasn't like I was doing it with any kind of real intention, right? And I often see people in the psychedelic scene, which is parallel to altered state breath work. It's like how many doses of this do you need before you're saying I'm just doing it for the high, right? So I think altered state breath work is such a powerful, wonderful thing. Um, and and I absolutely use it with my clients very regularly. I also think that you miss out on most of the good parts of altered state breath work if you go straight to altered state breath work and you don't do the pre-work. So learning how to really develop your sense of interoception is so essential, because because when you get to these altered state breathwork sessions, they can be so intense that you're dissociating. You're not really taking in, or you're not even really capable of getting the most out of, or anything in many cases, out of the experience, which is why a lot of times, like, you'll see like these whiteology and breathology and breath mystery and all these people, they advertise, we're coming to town, and they'll put you in a really deep state. And then you come out and you're like, whoa, people come out and they're, I don't know what happened. I was just like, I don't know what happened. Right. And I get that. And I was there, and there's fun to that too. I get it. But if you had taken that same person and you titrated and you helped that person to be able to stay grounded during that session, that person probably wouldn't say they don't know what happened. That person would probably have a far better vocabulary to explain it because they've been working on it, right? Because we start to put words and we start to put a vocabulary to our senses and our sensations, and that person would probably get far more out of it as well. So that so that it's And it's not sexy to say stuff like this, right? And this is where I appreciate everybody that's here, to who's really interested in digging deep into this and looking at it from a position where we can really apply it to our lives and where we can share it confidently and safely with the rest of the world, as opposed to let's just pass around the pipe and feel like we're getting an amazing experience. And maybe we are, maybe we're feeling amazing things. And maybe we really do have a profound thing that comes up. And that happens. I'm not saying it never happens. I'm just saying you're more likely to have a secure, safe, grounded experience that you can really use as you go out into the real world and take that with you if you titrate up and if you practice other forms of breath work that help you to become more in tune with who you are and to come to really relate to yourself. So anyway, I go on a little. I believe I have some really deep beliefs about that. So thank you for that question. I could probably go on, but we don't have a whole lot of time before we're going to get into the breathwork session. Now, this next breathwork session that we're going to get into today, we are going to use superventilation, and it is for the purpose of feeling good. Okay, we're not going to do that to go so far as to get into more of the psychedelic state, but we are going to have the bliss. We're going to feel good. We're going to do this in a sense of community, right? And so having that sense of community, that group session where we are having some blissful things. So we are going to do superventilation. And if you know that in the breath tribe, we have a lot of superventilation and we do have altered state breath work too. So sometimes whenever I talk about this, it sounds as if I'm poo-pooing on it. But what I'm really saying, I feel like it's more of like, I feel like it's more like me saying, hey man, instead of drinking the cheap beer, you should drink, the fine wine, right? Instead of just getting, you should really, or even imagine it's cheap beer, but if you allow yourself to fully expand the palate and you really bring the ceremony around it and you've built yourself to a point where you can get the goodness out of it, right? That's what good breath work is, right? It's where we've done the work to, and it's not just about one thing only, it's about all of this, right? So anyway, I go on and on. Thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate you a lot. Listen to your body during your breath work and clarity occurs. Absolutely, James. And Chris, you can totally relate. Well, say thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This month is a beautiful, amazing month in the Breath Tribe. So if you haven't joined the Breath Club on Patreon, go to Patreon now. We're about to switch over here in just a minute. I'm going to take a quick break, and we're going to switch over, and we're going to have the monthly breath party. This will be a blissful, enjoyable session. We're going to do a lot of superventilation, breath holds, all the fun stuff. Okay. We're going to do it with intention, and I'm going to help you stay grounded as you do this. All right. So I appreciate you. And thanks so much for being here. Look for a lot of really great things on the Breathwork channel coming up. And of course, join the Breath Tribe. You won't regret it. I'll see you soon.